Good evening. We're calling to order, well, we're back in session from executive session, the meeting of August 3rd. There is no action to report. And now we will resume public session. And we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And since it's the first official meeting of our new superintendent, Mr. Santana, would you please lead us in the pledge?
It would be my pleasure, President Felice. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. We have just a few short announcements to make, and then we'll go into some consent agendas and then our reports. So just please be mindful of the emergency exits that are located in the back of the room, to my right, to your left. Emergency exits located in the event of an emergency. Please leave in an orderly fashion through these exits. This is a smoke-free school district. Smoking is not permitted in the building or anywhere on the grounds. And also, this is a hate-free and bully-free school district. Thank you. First item on the agenda is the consent agenda item. Board consent agenda items 1 through 5 for your approval. Need a motion and a second. Motion and a
One
comment?
through
1 through 6?
6.
Did I say 5? I did say 5. 1 through 6.
Yeah.
1 through 6.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Motion by Vice President Hayes, seconded by, anybody? Trustee Flippin? Discussion. Does anybody have any discussion on the agenda items before you? I just will point out that there is one motion to attend the Nassau Suffolk School Board Association dinner meeting. We have one trustee requesting to go to that dinner. If there's anyone else that wants to go, just we need to know that so we can approve it. But if there's not at this time, we'll approve the motion as read. Okay. Any other questions on the other agenda items 1 through 6? Okay. All those in favor of consent agenda items C 1 through 6, please raise your hand. Okay. Seeing all hands raised, the motion passes unanimously. And next, we are up to communication and announcement. And first on the agenda, as we opened the meeting at 6:15, our superintendent, Mr. Antonio Santana, did take his oath of faithful performance administered by the district clerk. And so now he is officially the superintendent of schools for the South Country School District. And before he begins his report, I asked him if he would just share a little bit about him, and I think you'll quickly find out why we selected him to lead this district. Mr. Santana.
Thank you, President Felice. That's a lot of pressure. I finally got a nameplate, so I feel very good about myself. Super honored and privileged to be here. I got my humble beginnings in New York City. I was born in New York City, son of an immigrant mom. No father in the picture, and we grew up in poverty. And I really benefited from the public school system. I had great teachers and educators. And I also benefited from growing up in a very diverse place in Upper West Side of Manhattan, because I had access to people who had resources. And I was a nice kid from the projects that they took in and educated. And I think my open-mindedness really helped me sort of navigate life and change my status. I had my mother's love. She was uneducated and didn't speak English, but certainly gave me great values, the benefits of working hard, the benefits of being open-minded and being collaborative and working with people were fantastic. And she always gave me that love and support. And I feel very fortunate to have been able to attend a school like Cornell University, where I went to be a veterinarian. I loved animals. Once I did some dicey stuff with farm animals, I decided it wasn't for me. And to be honest, I was unemployed out of college, and I worked as a controller for a franchise. It was a multi-million-dollar franchise. I was a bright young kid, and the owner of the franchise put me in charge of all the finances. And I see Jennifer Segui in the audience, our business official, or our incoming business official, smiling. And I had no business experience. And I did that for 2 years, and that was a fantastic experience. I learned a lot about negotiating and negotiating credit, and then just how businesses operate, and how to be fiscally responsible. I did public relations also for entertainment public relations firm, because I ended up being a communication major in college. That was a fantastic experience. I got to hang out with the Fugees. I'm doing a little call back to the 90s, which is meeting Lauren Hill, those people was great. And I always had this dream of performing and being in entertainment, but growing up the way I was, I didn't think it was a real option. And I found myself unemployed, and guess what? New York City had a teacher shortage. And so I said, why not? Let me try teaching, let me give it a try. So I went to the Department of Education. They gave me what's called a provisional teaching license, meaning I taught, but I wasn't certified. I had that status for 5 years, because the city gave you 5 years to acquire credits toward your certification. And I had a horrific first day of work in Brooklyn. My first class had 39 kids. I had no supplies, no chalk, no curriculum. They asked if I spoke Spanish. I said, sí. And so they assigned me a Spanish class to teach. I didn't know how to teach a language. I quit my first day. I told my principal that I was not cut out to be a teacher. He said, well, I can't let you go. I need somebody in that classroom. You have to stick it out for a little while longer. And long story short, I grew to love the kids. It was a really diverse school. In one of my classes, I had 18 languages spoken, just in one class. I had a lot of Russian students, Ukrainian, Belarusian, Georgian, and you needed to know the difference because they would get really upset at you. Albanian kids, African-American kids, Hispanic kids. And it was a great experience. The truth is, I loved them, and I loved being around them, even though they tortured me. And so I really honed into my teaching skills over those 4 years. And then I resigned. And I did acting and comedy full-time. I got my Screen Actors Guild card. I did fun things, like I was in 5 episodes of Sopranos, Sex and the City. No speaking parts, I'm just there somewhere in the background. It was a great experience. I had a great time touring as a comedian. I did the college circuit, I did the clubs in the city. And then 9/11 happened, and guess what? There was no sort of the atmosphere for jokes and entertainment. So I went back to teaching, and I got my master's degree in school administration, and the rest is history. I really loved it. I've had the benefit of working in really different types of school districts. From school districts that almost operate like private schools in very affluent areas, to school districts that were very much diverse like us. And I've loved it. And for the last 7 years, I served as a high school principal, and I loved that. I was embedded in my community and had no aspirations to be a superintendent. Even though I did the new superintendent's training in Albany for a year, at the recommendation of my former superintendent, I had no interest in it until someone encouraged me 3 separate occasions to apply here, because when the Board of Trustees put out their brochure, they basically said, look, Tony, they're describing you. And I kind of reluctantly agree. I'm saying this in public. And I applied on February 4th. I'll never forget it. I submitted my application a little after 9 p.m. And here I am. I didn't apply anywhere else. What attracted me to this community was its diversity. I know there are challenges, and I've certainly faced challenges before in my life. And the prospect of being an agent of positive change and growth really is invigorating to me. And that's what I want to be. I think you've gotten a sense of, to know what my personality is, if you follow my Twitter, which I'll talk about in a second. But I'm a people person. I don't wear my title on my sleeve. I don't want anyone to change their posture when I'm around, but I certainly take the responsibilities of this office very seriously. And I pledged my due diligence to really work to not only address areas of growth for our district, but really to communicate with the community, to get more community involvement, and really to start marketing the district, because there's a lot of great things happening in South Country. I think a lot of people just don't know about it. So looking forward to doing this job. I think this is going to be, not that I think, I know this is going to be my last stop in my career in education. Hoping to retire from here whenever that date comes. I'm excited. I feel like I've been cramming for finals for the last couple of weeks or couple of months. It's been challenging. It's a lot of stuff I don't know. I'm a newbie, and I've never been a district administrator. But I certainly know how schools work. I know how kids work. And I'm really good in terms of bridging the gap between the community and our school system. So happy to be here. Sorry if I spoke too much, but yeah, again, I really feel humbled at this. I can't believe a kid from the projects, the superintendent of schools here. So, and my mom is super proud of me, and that means the world to me. So thank you for your indulgence. And I'll get to my superintendent's report. I'm a little emotional here in public, so All right, so part of the superintendent's report is to keep the community and the board sort of abreast of what I've been doing. So I'm put on my reading glasses, which are blue and red. All right, so in terms of community outreach, that's been one of sort of my priorities since starting on July 1st. So since our last board meeting, I've continued my efforts to reach out and meet with various community members and organizations in an effort, again, to familiarize myself with South Country. This includes the South Country Educational Foundation, the Brookhaven Village Association, and the mayor of Bellport Village, Mr. Fell, who also is a former superintendent, so I really enjoyed my conversation with him. I'm going to continue these efforts in the coming weeks. In fact, this coming Saturday, I'm going to be participating in a community volunteer day at the garden event. This is being held at the Bill Neal Community Garden, which is on the corner of McDonald Avenue and Patchogue Avenue. Basically, this community garden is looking for volunteers to help beautify the property, including doing some landscaping and organizing, which I love to do. The work begins at 11 a.m. this Saturday and finishes around 2. I'm going to be posting more information on my social media accounts, which are posted up there, and I'll talk to in a minute. But I really want to thank the Board of Trustees for pointing me in the right direction and connecting me with community members who have a lot to say and who have given me valuable input, especially President Felice, so thank you for that. In terms of the opening of schools, much to our lament, the summer is quickly coming to an end. And at this point, aside from sort of doing community outreach, I'm going to be shifting my focus on the opening of schools. This includes meeting with our administrative team and staff members to best prepare for our opening September 6th. Aside from instruction and learning, we're also going to be focusing on school safety. So we have meetings scheduled, myself and Mr. Briggs, with Inspector Sumwalk of the Suffolk County Police. He's a top officer at the 5th Precinct. He's meeting with a cohort of superintendents to discuss school safety protocols. In addition to a meeting organized by the Suffolk County School Superintendents Association, that's going to accomplish the same task, which is discussing safety protocols. Of course, we'll in turn turnkey this training and conversations with our staff. And our expectation is to really focus on school safety at the beginning of school, including the running of the various drills we do in our school buildings. I just want to assure the board and the community that safety is always paramount in what we do. I want to give a pre-K enrollment update. I plan on doing this for the remainder of the summer. So basically, as of this afternoon, all of our full-time slots are still full. So that means we're servicing 90 children or 90 families enrolled in our full-day program. We have 18 children enrolled in our morning half-day program, so that's capacity, and 3 students enrolled in our after-day program, the afternoon day program. So of the 21 students that are split between the half-day AM and PM program, 15 are on the waiting list for a full-day program. The reason, just for the board to be aware that we run a split program, is to accommodate more families. There's only 6 rooms at South Haven, and one of those rooms is designated because basically by running a half-day program, you double the amount of families you can reach. So really the goal is to reach as many families as possible and provide service. So I'll continue to keep the board updated with these numbers as they become available. Some good news, the CARES initiative, we recently were notified that we're selected to receive pre-assembled backpacks at no cost on behalf of Fordham University. The district is going to be receiving a total of 72 pre-assembled backpacks, which we placed on our next board agenda for approval for the donation. They're going to be distributed accordingly to the different school buildings and central registration, and we will be distributing them to students in need. So anytime community organizations, universities do something that's a nice gesture for our kids, I like to highlight it. So certainly, I'm sure those 72 kids are going to appreciate the backpacks and the supplies they come with. Some good news, I want to share some Bellport High School graduation statistics. So basically, we had 322 members of the class of 2022. Of the 322, 199 earned advanced Regents diplomas, which is a great accolade. 297 seniors earned a Seal of Civic Readiness, which is a new sort of accolade you receive on your diploma that makes you more competitive for college. 19 seniors were AP scholars, 4 were AP scholars with honor, and 6 were AP scholars with distinction. 72 seniors were National Honor Society members, and 8 of our seniors in our graduating class joined the military, which is really honorable. So I just wanted to share that with the board. And on communication and transparency, social media that you see displayed there, One of the priorities communicated by the Board of Trustees was communication and transparency by the school district and especially the superintendent. So I've already started discussing different mechanisms by which we can best reach our entire community. We're looking at the possibility of creating an email distribution group for community members who don't have children in the district, but want to stay in the loop and be informed. We're looking at the possibility of a weekly superintendent's blog, talk about technology, that will be accessible on our website. If you're not familiar with the blog format, that's just kind of an informal sort of update or email that's sent out to the community discussing the district and things related. And I'm going to keep the Board of Trustees informed as we these sort of venues for communication are solidified. But we're working on it, and it's my expectation that it will be ready for the start of the school year. In the meantime, community members can follow me on social media, both on Twitter and Instagram, which I have displayed up there. I just want to note that both these platforms are designed to keep the community posted of South Country happenings, both big and small, and to give community members an opportunity to get to know me as a person, and that's the transparency part. I want the Board of Trustees and the community to sort of know how I think and what my values are. I want to emphasize that neither platform is a venue for back and forth communication. It's just a way for me to keep in touch with the community. Really easy to follow. As long as it's on your smartphone, you'll have access to it. So yeah, follow me on Twitter at Mr. Tony Santana, and also Instagram at SC Soup Santana. Twitter will be a little bit more education related. The content will basically be the same on both platforms, although Instagram is a little less formal. So I'm excited about bringing that to the district, so please, if you haven't done so already, follow me.
That's not the accurate Instagram page, is it?
Yep.
At Mr.
Oh, no, it's not.
It's at the.
Thank you, Trustee Fitini. We did update that slide. I'll read it. It's SC, as in South Country, Soup, SUPT, Santana.
If you search Antonio Santana, it comes up. You can do that too.
All right. Trying to make it easy for the board and for the community members. So I'm excited about it. So I have a couple more things to tweet today. So please follow me. And finally, I'm excited that we finalize our board retreat, which is scheduled for August 9th from 6 to 9 p.m. Again, I want to say I feel fortunate to be working alongside a board that's so representative of our larger community. I'm confident that we could use our multiple perspectives and experiences to best serve our children as we promote learning in a safe and nurturing environment. So I'm really looking forward to a productive and collaborative relationship. And thank you for your vote of confidence.
Okay,
So that's my report, and I'll turn it over to President Felice.
all right, thank you very much. All right, now we're on to the trustee reports. Do we have any trustee reports? I know we kind of took these last 2 weeks to help you out in transitioning, and then both the vice president and myself did spend a good amount of time that the superintendent is giving us the ample time that we need in agenda meetings so that we can set the tone going forward. So we have completed 2 agenda meetings with him so far, and looking forward to many more positive meetings. And also equally glad that we were able to schedule our first retreat. Mr. Santana was very focused on getting the board to meet in that informal session that is permissible under the New York State education law, for us to get together, to establish relationships, so that we can work in the best way and, put our best foot forward on behalf of our district. So we're looking forward to next Tuesday night as well. And that's all I have. Nobody else has anything at this point. So now we have public commentary. Do we have any cards? No cards? Anybody from the audience wish to speak? Okay. If you wish to speak at the end of the meeting, you would simply need to fill out a card with the district clerk. All right, items for discussion.
All right.
That is your,
Yes, so our first item for discussion is the legislative committee, which we asked to bring back at this meeting. I just wanted to say that I'm really pleased that our board advisory committees have been established in terms of trustee participation, and we're still working to solidify the rosters for our representative committees. The 4 advisory committees, just to recap: strategic planning, teaching and learning, health and safety, and finance and facilities. Those are our 4 committees. We've released a schedule. Our first meeting will be in October, in which we can discuss the subcommittees tied to those committees and really iron out the sort of details in terms of frequency of meetings and their overall purpose. Aside from the advisory committees, the board is looking to continue operating a legislative committee. And for the sake of the new trustees and the public, I just want to explain that the importance of school districts collaborating with elected officials. I want to emphasize that this in no way means that the district is endorsing a political party or a sitting elected official or a candidate. It simply means that it's important that we advocate for the district, especially with individuals in these offices that can affect positive change and provide support. So I asked the board to share their thoughts on the legislative committee, and perhaps we can kind of finalize whether or not we'll be running one and who will be participating.
Well, I have served on the committee last year, and I stepped back, I had suggested I would step back this year because of my role as president, and I would visit the committees in my role as ex officio. But if there's no one to step up, you know, because you're new, because whatever the case may be, I'd be willing to step up, providing that we have other participation in it. Because I too believe we did get off on the right foot 2 years ago when the committee was established. And we did have our elected officials come in, we did share some of our concerns with the elected officials, and we did participate with the New York State School Board Association and their legislative agenda, where collectively our school boards advocate for legislation that helps us deliver educational services to our students. And so I don't want to see it go away, but so I'm offering to, you know, I'll serve on it. And if others want, we have 2 of our members missing tonight, so maybe we can, if we don't have commitments tonight, maybe we can bring it back one more time or make a request through the update tomorrow night.
Sure.
And we can go from there. All
Sounds
right?
good.
May I inquire about the structure? Because in the last couple of years, the only people on it had been like a legislative committee of the board. But I believe in years past, there's been an opportunity to have faculty and community members be
We
on.
did.
So I'm wondering, you know, I don't recall seeing a list or a roster of membership that included everybody. So I'm just wondering if maybe you could get more information for us about how it would be structured
So
when we come back.
I have an answer. So the advisory committees, there's a structure that we have to adhere to. It's got to be representation from all the collective bargaining units, community member, parent, etc. These committees don't necessarily have these requirements, so it's something we certainly can discuss. Certainly should be representative. However, I caution against having committees that are too large because sometimes it kind of loses its productivity.
The legislative
We
committee
did
had,
have, sorry,
it did have representatives from each
Right.
bargaining unit.
We did
And
reach
community
out.
and board.
and there
There
were,
was 2 community members, right?
I don't know
One
who
from each
has
unit.
the list of who served most recently, but maybe you can forward that, and maybe Mrs. Santana can send that out in tomorrow's update. All right? But yes, trustee Puccini is absolutely right. We did have a nice cross-representation from the bargaining units. And I don't recall who the community member was at this point. Do you?
Mr. Majinkala was his name.
And was he from the PTA?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Him and his wife are active in one of
Okay.
the, I think the Vern Kritz PTA. I think his
Okay.
wife might be the president. I could be wrong on
Did
the
you hear-
building.
did you hear
If there's anything the committee needs, it needs more community members
Mm-hmm.
than it had. It had, I think, 1 or 2 community members. And I felt the community wasn't very well represented on the committee.
And perhaps we need to do a better outreach too. So, okay.
The second item for discussion is the possibility of a special vote for use of capital reserve funds. As a board, and I'm sure most of the trustees are aware, and the community members are aware, there are capital projects that need to occur in the very near future. In order to make this happen, the district has to use capital reserve funds that are designated or meant for this purpose. The use of these funds does not represent an increase in taxes or a bond, but it does require a public vote as the district needs public approval anytime capital reserves are used. To just sort of simplify it, it's like a parent giving a child a savings account to put aside for books, but the child still has to get the parent's permission to use it. So the money is there already, I just need approval. So right now, the district is looking to make some safety upgrades that include replacing the turf field that's used by our lacrosse team, several other teams, and our physical education classes. While this field was inspected as early or as soon as just past July, less than a month ago, and was found to be fit to be used for at least another year, it's lasted beyond its recommended 10 years. So this is sort of a proactive move. Just like you have products that have expiration dates and and they could go long beyond that expiration date, we don't want to take that risk at the jeopardy of potential injuries to our students. So again, I want to note that while the turf field has been recommended and deemed suitable for use, certainly the replacement will ensure student safety and avoid potential injury, and really should be completed before it's deemed unsafe. Projects also include adding security cameras, replacing interior doors at the high school, upgrading the security door access system, and replacing some handrails in some of the staircases in the high school. The reason we put all these projects together is because it becomes state aidable. But these are all safety measures. Surely a new turf field would look fantastic, but I want to just assure the Board of Trustees that that's not the purpose for replacing it. It really has surpassed its life expectancy. The reason I bring this up, and there is a little bit of urgency, is because the state ed department has been notoriously slow in approving these projects. So again, this would involve a community vote. If the vote passes, then we have to submit the project to the state ed department. They have to approve it. They're saying the turnaround time is about 6 to 8 months. There's only 2 people in New York State that does this for every district in New York State. And then on top, above and beyond that, if the project is approved, we have supply chain issues, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm asking the board tonight to discuss the possibility of having a special election, considering that due to the midterm elections, we're not going to have access to voting machines between October 1st and December 1st. And if we chose to do an election during that time, it would have to be conducted via paper ballots. All right, so President Felice.
So when you've heard the superintendent's discussion, those of us who were on the board in March, we did discuss this previously, and we decided to hold off on seeking the approval at the budget vote time because we knew we could bring this back for a special vote at any time. So important to note, it would be more time consuming if we had to do a paper ballot, and because we rent the machines from the Board of Elections and can't use it during the time of early voting and then the November 8th vote, and then they tie them up to what, December 1st?
December
they said?
1st.
I guess that's for recount and whatnot. So we're actually looking at a date sometime the second week of December that would bring us to?
Either that or as early as October. And again, I don't know of the feasibility of getting the word out,
Okay.
advertising it, and that's what I want to discuss.
All right, so that's where we're at. So we're either looking at early October or early December.
So wait till December, it's done for this school year, correct? 6 to 8 months, supply chain issues.
I don't want to make any promises that cannot be kept. There's a risk that it won't be done for next school year, even if we do it in October.
Yeah.
So I just want to be very transparent about that. And again, there's a lot of variables, it's not just a vote, it's the state ed department. Other 2 people, the rumor is one of them that might be retiring. I was just in Albany these last 2 days, so that's my concern, is there's things that are sort of out of our control, which is the state approval process. Certainly we could submit it, and we've already had a resolution drafted, and then you have to go out to bid. And then after the bidding process occurs, we have to approve a vendor, and then they have to start securing the supplies. So
What's important to reiterate is these are funds that have already been put away in our reserves.
Right.
So they're in the bank. It represents no increase in taxes. It does, however, require, when the resolution was set up, I believe in 2016, that it does require voter approval to use those funds that are in the capital reserve. When we had the benefit of our student representative here on the board, she was able to explain to us, Ms. Johnson was able to explain to us how much that field was used during the pandemic when education and learning took place outside. And that was the field they used the most. So that it did have a benefit beyond the sports field that it has been used for. And so, and like you said, it's lived beyond its usable life. So there was absolutely a need for it at the time, and why we want to move in this direction.
So it sounds to me like the process needs to get started as soon as possible. And given the constraints with the voting machines, early to mid-December sounds like the earliest that it could be done.
No, we said early October.
Unless you, yes, but the trade-off there is there time to advertise it so that the public is aware about what President Felice just explained and the superintendent explained, that it's spending money that's already in the bank, and it's just determining how to spend the money. And it would be an opportunity to present about how that field is used for both physical education purposes, practice purposes, some of the sports teams that use it also. So I think it, just from a practical point of view, it sounds to me like that would be December. And yes, you're right, it's 2 months after the beginning of October.
Yeah, personally, I couldn't disagree more. I think it needs to be done as soon as possible. And I don't see any reason why the district cannot advertise and promote what this is about in the beginning of school when everybody's fresh and getting back and everything else. If you delay, I fear it won't pass.
I just, and I guess my concern is because we have a new superintendent, a new school year, a new lot of things happening at the beginning of September. I would yield to the superintendent as to whether this is something that can be
So in terms of process, it can be done. And I know that it's a little bit cumbersome to do the paper ballots, but in terms of advertising, I think it's pretty easy to sell. And again, I don't think there's any controversy attached to it. We definitely need it. I think we've had that turf field for, I think it might be the 12th year. They're supposed to last 10 years. And there's much better technology out. And again, there's also security upgrades attached to this capital project as well. And I know that certainly school safety is on the forefront of everybody's mind. So I don't know if there's any other trustees that want to offer their thoughts, but if I'm charged with making this happen, then we'll make it happen for October.
My statement about December just seemed like, from a practical point of
Right.
view, getting all the pieces in place to
Right.
do it. But if you're the one charged with doing it and feel that you could do it earlier, then I would agree with Mr. Puccini that better to go ahead and do it. I just was not sure that you'd have the time and all of that to get that done on top of everything
So,
else.
like I said at the beginning of this meeting, I pledged to do my due diligence to advocate for the district. So if that's a decision that we make, then certainly we'll make it happen.
So the machines aren't available from October 1st? How about September 30th? I mean, like, you know, if we're talking about a week here, I mean, if that's really gonna be that big a difference, but I'd rather count paper ballots for 2 months than wait 2 months, so it's one or the other for me.
I don't think you have enough time to advertise if it's September 30th, to put it in the papers.
You mean legally,
Barbara-
what's the time frame?
Could you just say that
45
louder,
days.
because I'm sure that the audio didn't pick up what you
So
just said.
I don't believe there's sufficient time to post the notices that are required in the paper for September
Isn't it-
vote.
Isn't it 30 days prior to
It's
the notice?
45,
Oh, it is 45, okay, so you're probably right. It would have to go out in the next week,
right.
so forget the machines.
All right.
Honestly, a vote like this is not gonna be 3,000-4,000 people, it's gonna be like 800. You know, historically, it's not a huge turnout. In my opinion, I don't think counting paper ballots is that big a deal.
I'm going to ask the clerk to weigh in, because her office is charged with the voting. What is your feeling? Let's round it up to 1,000. What is your feeling about? Now, during the pandemic, you counted paper ballots, did you not?
Yes, we did, and we went into the next day to finish
Right,
counting.
took
And there
2
was
days.
there was about 3,400, I think, at that time.
Because that was a mail-in ballot,
That was
all
mail-in.
mail-in.
Yes,
So you did have a higher voter turnout.
yes.
And you got it done in 2 days.
Yeah, and at this past election, we had about 344 absentee ballots. And it took us, the polls closed at 9 o'clock, and it took the election inspectors till, I believe it was around 11:30 to finish counting. So if, that's at least, you want to give it at least 2 hours for 300, 350.
Would we have to hire more inspectors, or were you
It's
able
very-
to do it with the inspectors that you
I would
have?
like to hire more inspectors if they're available. The problem is since the COVID hit, most of the inspectors are older, and a lot of people have dropped out and are not available and don't want to come out to do it. I can certainly go off the list from the Suffolk County Board of Elections and see if there's more people available, and there might be because it's not in May election.
Right.
There's no other votes to compete with.
Yeah. So we might be able to, if we could even double the amount of election inspectors we usually have, I think that would be helpful.
So
There's
if,
no specific need to have the results immediately the way there is on a May vote.
right.
If they get them 12, 15 hours later the next day, who cares?
So then, having said that, and considering the 45-day minimum requirement for issuing notice to the papers, are we looking at like a mid-October? A time that's reasonable?
That's likely the earliest. How far in advance do you need to give notice to publish?
We have to give notice at least the first publication has to be at least 45 days before the
I
election.
mean
and
to the publication.
To the newspapers.
then that has to be at least a week before.
Oh.
So it would have to be, both the capital reserve proposition would have to be approved first, and then the legal notice would be approved after that. So they could be done at the same meeting, but you have to do, the capital reserve has to be approved before the legal notice, and that would have to be done at the next meeting
Okay.
in order to go for like October 19th.
So we would have to count 45 days from August 17th is when the resolution will be approved, which is our next board meeting, and then we move forward from there.
Well, then it's about a week lead
Right.
time for your newspapers, and then 45 days from there. And then in terms of the staffing, you need at least 2 inspectors per ballot box.
Yes.
Right, so in terms of just getting the requisite staff, once you have the paper ballots, you need 2 per box.
So you're really looking at a 60-day from August 17th.
So I think
September, October.
we're covered, so we can do it.
So could it be the middle of October, or,
Realistically, it's looking like the third week in October to me, based on the timeline. You're talking about like October 21st.
So if we're gonna have it on the agenda for the next meeting to approve the proposition, that gives you time to work with Barbara and to work with our
Right.
clerk to
Yeah.
figure out the scheduling, and then we'll have the answers when we come back at our next meeting.
Right.
okay,
All right.
all right.
So,
So the board is in agreement to move forward, and then we'll, our final decision will be at the next meeting. Okay.
Our next item for discussion is a risk assessment audit. So as we look to the upcoming school year and our budget season, we're going to be looking at efficiencies and looking by means by which we could reduce expenditures, in all honesty. So part of that process is engaging in audits of our business practices, personnel, programs, and systems. I just wanted to sort of remind the Board of Trustees and inform the public that the school district currently conducts both internal and external audits by impartial parties, meaning that these audits are conducted by folks that are not district employees, but independent contractors in a sense. So No Rocky Smith is our internal auditors, and they basically look at our policies and procedures and our internal controls to make sure everything is copacetic. They provide risk assessment audits, and basically what the risk assessments indicate is whether or not risks are low, moderate, or high in terms of our practices, which means money is not being handled appropriately or our systems need some fixing. Right now, their focus has been on student support services, and they provide monthly reports. Cullen and Danowski are our external auditors, and they basically prepare our financial statements and audit our books to ensure everything is accounted for in the correct school year, et cetera, et cetera. They conduct annual audits, which includes interviews with staff and stakeholders. I've been on the receiving end of those audits and interviews as a high school principal, so they ask all types of questions in terms of how we do purchase orders, how we collect money from school events, et cetera, et cetera. So I also want to note to the Board of Trustees that each of these agencies can engage in both auditing practices, internal and external. They have to be one or the other, even though each agency is equipped to do either. They typically have 5-year contracts with school districts, and in doing some research about our 2 current audited services, Cullen and Danowski and Rocky and Smith, I've gotten really positive feedback from other superintendents and districts who utilize their services. So at this point, I guess what I'm asking the board to discuss is whether or not we want to decide on a focal point they'd like to see our internal auditors focus on, because they do change their focus, and we can sort of speak to them about that. But they basically provide the service that I think we're looking for in terms of looking for just any gaps or any areas of improvement in our business practices. If we're going to be looking at staffing and the cost of the district for personnel, that would be more of an administrative function and not the function of an independent auditing agency. President Felice?
So you want to know what we'd like to look at right now? Is that what you'd like to?
I mean, if there's any general ideas, we could certainly set up a meeting with the agency to discuss areas that we'd like looked at. They basically sort of rotate what they look at in their auditing process, and it's done on a monthly basis.
I think, and I appreciate that you looked into it and without solicitation, because you came into this district knowing that, we had a tough go of it our last budget cycle. And so, and I'm just speaking on behalf of myself right now, and the other board members, I hope will share their feelings as well. I just feel like we have to look at every nickel we spend. And, even photocopying. Are we photocopying single-sided or double-sided? Are we copying are we copying and distributing copies when we could be sending emails? Every little item of efficiency that we can look at, I think we have to look at before we get into the budget cycle. So those are the things I'm looking at. And then administratively, authorization for overtime. Overtime can be a big abuse. Working from home can be widely abused. So I'm not suggesting that it is, but I'm just saying there may be further efficiencies that we could gain to save the district money and save the taxpayer money. I think that's what we have to look at. We have to look at every nickel that we spend and analyze if we're spending it wisely.
And part of my learning process as I still transition to this position, will be working with Ms. McGee in terms of even doing a line item analysis, which is what you do with your budgets. And one of the things you look for is whether or not certain lines we use to transfer funds into another line, which means that specific line is over budgeted for. So there are certainly different things we can look at. Certainly we look at overtime and those types of things, which is, I'm not saying it's something we should do, it's something that we must do.
Okay.
Yes, Trustee Hayes.
I agree that efficiencies are very important to look at, but I'm going to go back to what I've been really trying to emphasize ever since the beginning of February, and that is to take a really hard look at whether or not we're getting all the best benefit we can from our outside professionals, which would be, bond counsel, financial advisors, and to make sure that we're engaged in best practices at all levels, and how we're using our outside professionals as well as our people inside. And is there anything that we need to be doing internally to make, say, our business office work better? So when you were talking about risk assessment, I lit up with that because that's exactly the category of what I'd wanted to have looked at for all of our outside professionals and how they're working with us.
And risk assessment is a function of the internal auditors that we currently employ. And like I said, we can sort of guide their focal point.
But I'm also wondering if this might be an add-on to the regular audit that they're working on for us, because they go through a schedule.
Right.
Every few years, you do a certain area to audit. This could be a different service that they could be doing, at the same time, while they're doing the regular internal audit on the area that had been selected. Have them look into the efficiencies and look into the best professional practices.
Okay. Mr. Puccini, anything?
No.
Mr. Flippin?
Alright, so our last item for discussion is our academic eligibility practices. So academic eligibility practices are typically in place to ensure that student athletes both attend to their academic performance and adhere to our school's code of conduct. So one of the things I want to emphasize as a superintendent and as a school district is the importance of being a student first, and that we want to make sure that our athletes represent our schools in a positive manner. And that's why these policies are put in place. I want to note that for many students, participation in sports is what keeps them connected to school. This can be said for many of the great programs our schools have to offer, like music and performing arts, robotics, our various clubs and activities. They all provide a niche for our kids to feel safe and secure. So the point of eligibility policies is not to punish students who don't perform well academically, but to provide a safeguard and some guidance to assure that sports do not get in the way of their academic success. There is an appeal process embedded in most of the policies I've encountered, including our policy here in South Country, because kids sometimes have extenuating circumstances that may affect their ability to perform academically. Again, the point is to support our students, and this is certainly going to be a priority for our new athletic director, Mr. Hayes, as he assumes his role next week on Monday, to make sure that we're looking out for our students and making sure that they're, successful in their academics first and foremost. So that the board is aware, the academic eligibility practice is monitored by a committee of staff members. It's facilitated by the athletic director, and it's made up of stakeholders that include building administrations, faculty, and staff. The committee meets on a regular basis, not necessarily coinciding with our marking periods, but they'll meet on a regular basis to get status reports. I also want to note that much like in my former school district, the academic eligibility policy was suspended during the 2021 school year due to the pandemic, especially the attendance component, because kids weren't coming to school, they were remote, so it was really impossible to hold kids accountable for their attendance during that year. And last year, even though it was active again, it wasn't active to its full capacity, because again, when we started the school year, if you recall, there was a remote option. Attendance was a concern in school districts across the island and state. So even though we approached normalcy, we didn't get all the way there. So it's the expectation that we're going to be following this policy with fidelity in the upcoming school year. And I added academic eligibility to the agenda because there were questions raised in the last few days regarding the practice. I also want to note that our academic eligibility policy is included in our district code of conduct. President Felice, is there a discussion?
Any discussion from the board?
I do.
Okay.
Is it possible we can send this back to the committee for updates? The strategic planning committee? I just want to see what their input would be, because personally, there are some things that I would want to address, but I would want to.
Yeah, so because it's part of our code of conduct, and the board of trustees has to approve the code of conduct, this is certainly something that falls under the purview of the strategic planning committee.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so absolutely, I encourage, and really policies like this should be looked at on a regular basis because times change, kids change, and so we want to make sure that we're keeping up with changes.
Okay, all right, we'll refer it to the strategic planning committee.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Okay,
That's it
And
for
I
me.
was the designated grammar specialist on the strategic planning committee.
everyone is well aware of that.
I know, so I'm just, gonna suggest that on this, could they please add the date of this policy? It's nowhere here, so looking on the face of it,
So
you
this was
can't-
printed from our code of conduct. The Code of
Okay.
conduct does have a date. So it's I think page 26 of our code of conduct. But we'll take it. Trustee Davis.
All right, any other comments on the academic eligibility? So now you're up to the board consent agenda for curriculum.
Yes, so the administration recommends approval of curriculum items G1 through G2.
Okay. All right, you heard the recommendation of the superintendent. Is there a motion for item G1 through 2? Trustee Trent, seconded by Vice President Hayes. Any discussion? No discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you. Seeing all hands raised, the motion passes unanimously. Now we're up to the consent agenda for personnel.
The administration recommends approval of personnel changes reflected in schedules H1 through H7.
Okay. Before we go forward, anybody want to pull anything out? No? Okay. All right, so you have before you the recommendation for H1 through H7. Need a motion and a second, please. Motion by Vice President Hayes, seconded by Trustee Trent. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please raise your hands. And seeing all hands raised, the motion passes unanimously.
So, President Felice, we may take a quick moment to acknowledge two of our newest teachers that we
Yes.
just approved.
Please do.
I'll ask them to stand so we can make you feel awkward. But first, I want to introduce Matthew Conan. Please stand. I had the privilege of meeting Matthew informally for a meeting with me as a superintendent. He came across as a super conscientious person. Another attribute or a silver lining to his candidacy is the fact that he's a man, and we need more men in our elementary schools. So I think that serves an incredible purpose. There's actually research that shows that boys underperform girls, and I'm making excuses for us guys, in elementary schools because of the disproportionate amount of women to men. So I don't know what the sample size was, but certainly we love the fact that you're joining our team. He's worked as a teaching assistant. He's worked at Brookhaven for a number of years. He certainly has Dr. Raymond's endorsement. So welcome to our South Country family. Thank you very much. We also have Lara Miller. So really excited to have met her because she'll be working in our dual language school. And what I found most remarkable about Lara's story is that she is an English language learner. She actually came to us from Germany. She studied undergrad in Germany and came to the United States to pursue a career in education. And what I love about having a teacher with that experience is because we tend to sort of capture students who are learning English or compartmentalize them into one group. Typically, they come from South America, Central America, especially in our area. To actually have someone who's from Europe and from Germany who has similar experiences learning English, acclimating themselves to a new culture, I think is going to be a great benefit to the students in your charge. So I'd love to hear your story. So happy you're joining our Brookhaven family. So welcome, Lara.
Okay. All right, board consent agenda and items I for business.
The administration recommends approval of business items I1 through I6.
Okay. We need a motion and a second for I1 through I6. Motion by Mr. Trent, seconded by Vice President Hayes. And I would just like to have some discussion on it. I did find that the food service management contract that we're entering into, after it was 149 pages, it needed the consultation of our council to make sure that everything was in order. So Ms. Emma Holtz was very kind enough to review that for me and assure us that everything is in order. And in fact, you said it is a
So it's a standard
Standard
document in terms of the content. That's something that I believe was reviewed by administration. There were a few corrections that I noted in there that administration made. So in terms of the specifics of the information contained therein, that was something reviewed by administration. But as to the form, it's a standard form.
yes.
So, yeah, I did have a question about the redactions in it. are there redactions because those information is impertinent because it's an emergency contract? Why were those items redacted?
So I didn't make those redactions, but it's my understanding that Ms. Costa may have provided some explanation.
Yeah, I have a memo I can provide to the board in my update regarding that explanation. I haven't had yet an opportunity to read it. But my understanding was that school districts didn't really, and I can't really explain it, the redactions. I don't think it was pertinent information. I can certainly look at the memo that was shared, which I have in my possession now.
Well, I asked that question because I'm a little uncomfortable voting on a contract with that many redactions. But if you have an explanation, you can definitely share it with us.
There is an explanation, so
Okay.
it's not a cause of concern. I apologize for not being able to answer specifically. I have to look at the memorandum, so.
Okay. And who controls the salaries of the service workers? Is it Winston or is it us?
It's a great question. Can I, Winston?
Winston.
Okay. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Any other questions on any other items in consent item I-1 through 6? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hands. Seeing all hands raised, the motion passes unanimously. And that brings us to our final opportunity for public commentary. Do we have any cards? No cards? Okay. Closing remarks. Any closing remarks? Yes.
I do. I just want to welcome our new teachers. Welcome. And I wanted to just ask administration if we can look into keeping our food service free for our young people.
Absolutely. So, with the board's indulgence, I'll give you a quick response. So basically, for a school district to be eligible for free lunch for all, you have to hit a benchmark percentage of kids who have free and reduced lunch. So what I want to do at the start of this school year is really aggressively market the idea that everyone should submit lunch forms. Everyone, even if you don't feel like you qualify, submit a lunch form, because you never know. And I don't know off the top of my head what that benchmark number is, but I don't think we're that far off.
70% or so.
Yeah, it's somewhere in the high 60s or 70%. Once you hit that benchmark, it happened in my former district just this past year where everybody gets free lunch, and I think it's a worthwhile endeavor. I would recommend that the advertisement for this be done in a separate mailing. Typically, lunch forms are put in those huge packets parents get, and I'll confess as a parent, I don't look at the whole packet. So certainly certain things that we deem important should be separated and segregated. And you know, I'll use my Spanish-speaking skills, and I'm looking forward to doing some community meetings in Spanish, but to reach that portion of our community to make sure everybody submits it. And it's certainly a goal for us. But thank you for bringing that up.
We've applied, there's a couple of different programs, there's one through the U.S. Department of Agriculture that we apply for every year that
Right.
we haven't been approved for yet. I think it took William Floyd School District more than 10 years of applying before they finally got approved. So there's a couple of districts that do that, but like I said, even if we have the criteria, you still have to be selected.
Correct.
And it takes some time.
But we'll keep at it for sure.
Okay,
I appreciate it.
all right. Does anybody else have closing remarks?
I just wanted to comment about how much I appreciated this meeting tonight. And it started off on a really good note with having our new superintendents take the oath of office. And I think it's ended on a very good note in terms of looking to the future about how we're gonna do things better. And so I'm looking forward to being able to go home from a board meeting and feeling good about it. So thank everybody around the table for that.
Sure, I appreciate the comments, and I'm gonna feel more than good, I'm gonna feel relieved. It was my first one.
Well, I would also just like to thank Mrs. Santana for the first month that you spent in transition. You made every effort to get out to every part of our community. And from the feedback I got, you were very well received wherever you went. And we know as school starts, your time is going to be limited in focusing on the first day of school and certainly the school year. And your commitment to communications. Well, you, right away, you know, the first Monday that you were superintendent, you sent a letter out, and, you know, to educate our parents mostly about the first day of school. And we did have a conversation with the superintendent about the need for the community. This community does want to know what's happening in this district because of their support for this district. So we are working on those steps. The board should be aware of that, the public should be aware of that. And I think it's demonstrated by Mr. Santana's willingness to be on social media to also educate and inform our public as to where you are and what you're doing, and also showcase the highlights of this district that we know exist. And other people need to be made aware of it as well. So keep up the good work. It was a pleasure, you know, hiring you. It was a pleasure working with you these first few months. And also the board, I think Mr. Santana mentioned it to you, but the board is going to be invited to the superintendent's conference with all of our educators, and actually it's the entire,
It's entire district
it's
staff.
entire
yeah.
district staff. Which I think is a good, also another good step to show that we're part of a team. We all have our distinct roles. We're going to be talking about those roles more in our retreat next Tuesday, but we're part of the same team.
Absolutely.
And we're excited that you're at the helm.
Excited to be I don't know if I'm excited to be at the helm, but I'm excited to be here. How about that? So,
All
thank
right.
you, President Felice.
All right, with that, we need a motion to adjourn. Motion by trustee Trent, seconded by trustee Flippin. No objections, no objections. We stand, it's unanimous. Nobody objected. And we stand adjourned at